shortly. Yeah, here I am. Great. So thank you for joining us. This is the DEIB Small Talk. Once again, I'll say welcome back. It's been quite an holiday. It's a new season for us here at Bava Consulting and Management. And my name is Florence Idowu. Now we'll share some. Sorry, I do forget I've changed my name. Okay, so I do have quite a number of speakers today. It's going to be a roundtable discussion where we're going to have conversations around DEI initiatives and implementation. I have set of questions which we're going to dive into today. But before I do that, I'll bring up my guests. We have around 3 to 4 guest speakers today. Like I said, it's going to be a roundtable and we'll talk about my DEI journey, their DEI journey, and how to be successful in DEI initiatives and implementation. I know it's been quite some challenges, recent changes around DEI policies, around DEI programs. We know everything that's been happening. There's a lot of gist around that. So I would say get ready. But before we go into that, yes, I want to welcome all those who have been joining us. If you're joining us wherever you are joining us from, please put in the chat box. I want to know where you're joining us from. I want to know where you are currently. I want to call out names if that's the case, just to appreciate you for joining us today. Once again, my name is Florence Idowu Oluseson, and this is the DEI Small Talk. Thank you. You can drop in the chat where you are joining us from. You can drop in the chat your expectations for today's program. I will be taking note of the chat. I see people are joining us, but it will be great to know where you are joining us from. On that note, I'll bring in my guest speaker. I have around 3 currently. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Yeah, we're going to do some introduction. It's going to be an exciting season. It's going to be an exciting session. I know it's Christmas and I'm in the spirit of holidays already. Tell me, what's up? Before we do the formal introduction, how has it been with you?
It's
Doing
been a
well,
busy
doing
time of
well.
year. Yeah, it's been a busy time of year, but it's been great.
Absolutely.
It's been
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it's been
Same
great.
here.
It's been great. So I know we do have on the website, we have all your portfolios. So people could have seen who our speakers are. We have you on LinkedIn. I have you on my Connect section on Bavard Consulting and Management. But I'll start with Jaya. You just like 1 or 2 things you want to tell the speakers about you, then we'll go into today's session. So tell us about you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Florence, and thanks for having me today. My name is Jaya Mallik, and my pronouns are she and her. I am the founder and chief empathy officer of Jaya Mallik Coaching and Consulting, which I launched earlier this year. I am the former DEI leader of Tandem Diabetes Care, and I'm really excited to join these wonderful practitioners in conversation today. There's so much for us to dive into, and I can't wait to get started.
Exactly. And there's something special about this because selection, which I think is going to be is going to be noticeable and obvious to audience. But before I break the ice, let me go to Jared.
Hey everyone, Jerad Green. I use he series pronouns. Can you still hear and see me okay?
Yeah, definitely we can see you.
Okay. It says connection was lost. Jerad Green, he series pronouns. I am the founder and strategist for Quixotic Solutions LLC. Um, I also have a day job where I work for the state of Minnesota, and I am excited to be here with you all today. I um, this work is a passion area for mine. It's not something that I stumbled into by way of my career, but something that I have been committed to throughout my career, and I feel honored and privileged to be able to be in this space where I have the ability to create community, to construct meaning and change and transformation with other people. And I really try to center relationships in my work. I love to connect with other people and and to think about how we can work best together to achieve some of the desired goals and outcomes that we have. So, um, Florence, I appreciate you giving us this platform and space to run our mouths and say a little thing here and there, and to connect with other folks from it looks like around the world. So
Yeah, it's
the
definitely
conversation
around the world.
today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us, Gerard. Yes, and I have with me Tafiq. Tafiq. I'm going to
Happy.
try to pronounce your last name. It's Akal.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing
Yes.
great. No.
Yes, I'm Tafiq Akhir, also known as Mr. Menopause. I am a licensed menopause awareness and healthy aging specialist. I predominantly work with companies and organizations to teach them about the intersectional diversity of menopause because it is an overlooked part of the workplace that people don't realize is actually very enthralled in diversity, equity, inclusion as well. And so I help companies, organizations, and individuals. Once they learn about that, then I teach them how to provide the support for the companies and their employees that they need.
Thank you very much. I just mentioned that I have a handful selection today. And yeah, we have everyone in the DEI space and different aspects of the DEI space, and also founders of their own initiative, their own organizations. And that is something that tells. It goes a long way to just say, I'm the founder of this, or I'm in the DEI space. But this is very unique because you all understand and you have the passion of what you want to pursue, and you're doing that passionately. Yeah, I just want to say welcome to our guests. I see people joining us all the way from Nigeria, from Minnesota. I can see from Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and definitely I see Melissa Green. Oh, thank you very much. I say, oh, it's mom. Thank you, mom, for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're going to dive into our conversation. I'm trying not to lose track for people who are going to join us on LinkedIn. You can leave a comment section on LinkedIn because this is also being broadcast live, not just on YouTube, but also on LinkedIn. And to my guest speakers, I think I've already informed you via chat is you can also broadcast this live to your own LinkedIn or YouTube channel. It's totally free, it's totally allowed. Okay, so we're going to get started. Another conversation, the topic we have before us is how to be successful in DEI initiative and implementation. And there have been recent a lot of changes, a lot of policies. I mean, federal policies, states, local. I just read one yesterday. Oklahoma is now going straight to implement Supreme Court's law and strikeouts DEI officers and stuff like that. So those are conversations that are coming up in the DEI space now, and it's threatening. It's you want to ask questions, but where can we ask questions if not in a roundtable like this? Okay, a virtual roundtable, yeah, in a roundtable like this. But questions that have always come to me throughout my career has always been, how can I be successful as a DEI leader, as a DEI coordinator, program coordinator, lead and stuff. And I talked about putting together not just about DEI initiative. Look at Mr. Tafiq, for instance, now. He is in a unique space, menopause, right? Which is great. Some of us, we are in other spaces, the ethnicities there, we focus on the some focus on LGBTQ, some focus on various aspects of the DEI and intersectionality, which I think Gerard and Tafiq had talked about today. It's something we cannot push aside. So today we'll be looking more into first, yes, everyone wants to know why DEI, why did you go into it? And then we'll begin to dive into other aspects of the DEI conversation. So I am just going to put it just for visibility and accessibility, um, accommodate, right? For those who might want to read. So we're going to look into your pivotal moment that spark your interest, and not just interest now, it's commitment, because you guys, you've moved away from just me being in the DEI space and a corporate organization to doing this work on my own. So now what sparked your interest and commitment in DEI? So I would like to learn more about your personal interest. I'll start from Mr. Menopause.
So my interest, it kind of just fell actually into me. Actually, I was working in menopause predominantly with women only. And then I started working in corporate wellness. And it was there that I started getting questions from women, saying, can you do something about menopause? Can you do a presentation about menopause? But unfortunately, the people who brought me on and the leaders were not interested in putting that out there. And at the time, I was working for a corporation that does corporate wellness stuff. So I was actually brought in by them. So I wasn't working directly with the companies. So what I noticed was that the people weren't listening to what the women were saying that they needed. And so then I started researching more about how menopause impact the workplace. And then I found all the diverse areas that it impacts: gender equality, inclusivity, race, retention and acquisition, occupational health and safety. And so I thought, I'm like, well, these are really important things that people don't realize. You can probably knock out 4 different initiatives with one menopause awareness training and certification. And so that's how I got into focusing on the DEI aspect of menopause, because I think that once companies realize that they're able to make these changes and understand actually the social and economic impact of menopause and how it really affects their company, and by providing this as part of their DEI or even an employee wellness program, that they can actually make some real changes in their companies and their business and talent retention.
Awesome. Then I'll go to you, Jerad.
Yeah, I always love this question because it brings me back to a really cool moment in my history and my time as a college student. Um, I don't often get the opportunity to share this story, but it's one that was pivotal to my experience in the back in the day. So I was a pretty active student leader on campus. I was involved from my freshman year in cultural clubs, housing organizations. I was an admissions ambassador. I pretty much did everything that you could do as a student in the student activity space. But one pivotal moment was when I attended a conference. It was called the Power and Diversity Leadership Conference that was hosted here in Minnesota. And at that conference, we had the opportunity, us as student leaders, there was about 29 of us that went to the conference. And we had the opportunity to just connect, to be with one another, to meet other student leaders at different institutions across the state. I remember that year, some of the speakers that were present were Dr. Cornell West, Tavis Smiley attended the conference, Patricia Rose, um, and so many other, CT Vivian. I got to drive him to the airport. Like, it was a really cool conference and a really cool experience. And when we went back to campus from that conference, we created this group called Power and Diversity Winona Leaders. So I went to Winona State here in Minnesota, and we honestly, we just began organizing. When we were at the conference, we noticed that the institution that was held at had a multicultural center on campus, and we didn't have that. And we got to talk to the students there who shared how meaningful it was to have a space like that, where they had a common area. They had, each of the organizations had their own separate, like, mini offices. Um, and it was just a cool space that students could go and find respite in. And so when we went back to campus, we're like, how do we get that? So, you know, we began organizing, and what we ended up doing was basically facilitating a campaign demonstration on campus called No Space. And part of the campaign was that we were out in the middle of campus, got signatures. We built a cardboard 2x4 structure, where folks stayed in for 2 to 3 nights, which was covered in cardboard and tarp because it rained. But at the same time, we were understanding, like, what coalition building looked like, what accessing and pulling levers within the institutional environment looked like. Um, Honestly, the conditions were ripe for us. We were going through a reaccreditation visit for the university. Our current president at the time was retiring, and a new president was coming in. We had a number of leaders who sat on our student senate, um, and we were able to really just leverage all the different pieces of the institution, and through that I learned more about just how higher education operates as a system. And for me, it was one of the first times where I began thinking about the impact that I could make for others and not just for myself. And for me, that was kind of this space of engaging more in social justice that I really appreciated having the opportunity to do. And initially we got a temporary space that was a little bit old and crusty, like 2 blocks away from campus, with the promise that we would have a permanent space in the heart of the student union, which did happen the year after I graduated. And so being able to go back to that space now and hear students talk about it in such a colloquial way where there's like, oh yeah, like let's meet in the Keep Center later. Because it's such a normal part of their life now. And to see that legacy and to see the impact that we were able to make on students who came after us, even when we didn't know them, was so powerful. And that movement, that work that we did was really what sparked my career interests, not only in higher education, but in the DEI space as well, social justice space as well. And ever since that point, I've committed myself to this work and have intentionally sought out opportunities that would allow for me to continue doing that work. And so,
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's quite. That's quite. I like to ask the question about the background because a lot of us people just know we are in the space, we are advocating for this, but they do not know, they do not understand why. Why are you so passionate about it? And I know during the conversation, I saw Jaya was smirking and smiling. I'm gonna hear a story. I'm not gonna joke. Okay, now let's just go to Jaya. Tell us about your own background. I want to know why your interest in commitment.
I was smiling because I just like to hear Jerad's story, and he's a very good storyteller. So I enjoy listening to him speak. Um, so my path into DEI has not been one that was straightforward, but it's sort of one that's played an undercurrent throughout my life. If I look back, um, so I'm a first generation American, and I think that my path really started with actually my grandparents, because I drew a lot of inspiration from them. They were survivors of the Pakistan and India partition in 1947, and they imprinted on me a commitment to community and well-being and a collectivist mindset. And I think that was something that was always present in my life. And so the idea of caring for the community was something that I grew up with. I think that one of the biggest turning points for me was actually the impact of 9/11. And around 9/11, I was a teenager growing up in the DC area, and I personally experienced discrimination firsthand right in the middle of my adolescence. And that really started to heighten my awareness of discrimination. And I really felt that isolation at that time, that lack of belonging, and that hyper awareness of what it meant to be the one of or the only of, and be otherized. And in that time, as an adolescent, I responded by really withdrawing from my community. I homeschooled myself. I eventually earned a scholarship. And that really ignited, I think, my quest to become somebody that could be a person that helped to change the world for better outcomes, where it could be more inclusive, more compassionate. And I think that part of that comes from growing up in having the privilege and opportunity to grow up in affluent suburbs, and also have kind of moved between that and my parents working and growing up in the inner city environment of DC. And so during that time, somewhere in between, I developed a passion for education. And that led me down the path of actually starting off my career as a K-12 teacher. So I taught middle school and high school students for 5 years. I was predominantly in inner city DC or in Southern Maryland. And I worked as a history teacher, and I absolutely loved it. And most of my kids were Black and brown students. And this became a way as a vehicle for me to start addressing generational disparities in education. And that brought me immense fulfillment. Eventually, I decided to move out of that space, a lot of it due to under-resourcing, understaffing, and I transitioned into the corporate environment, working in learning and development with that mindset of how can I enable people to develop the skills in order for them to progress forward in their career. And then eventually the journey led me to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And after observing multiple inequities in the corporate environment and facing them myself head on, I decided to make this final shift towards becoming a DEI practitioner full time. But really, it's always been there. It's always been sort of omnipresent in my life. It's just that within the latest chapter of my career, I've decided to put my whole heart, energy, and time into it, which has been a decision I've never regretted.
Thank you very much, Jaya. Okay, so
Cool.
we're going to take a moment for reflection. I want everyone to just take a step back and reflect. We have been talking now, my guests, Jaya, Tafiq, Jerad, has spoken much about their background. So now to the audience, I want you to just take a deep breath and reflect. Reflect on your own journey. Look at what Tafiq said. Look at what Jerad said. Look at what Jaya said. And everything spawned from passion, not just a passion, but a mission and a vision to change things. You want to change. If I'm going to go into my own story, we're not going to leave this list today. So I want us to focus on you all. Just reflect on why is DEI important. I want the audiences to reflect on that. Now to the second question I have for you all. So this is what I'm gonna do is because of I do not want us to overshoot our time and DI conversations. Oh gosh, 1 hour is never enough to discuss a single question. Trust me. But would just want to do a reflection. Student reflection is active listening. Looking at what you've said so far, you'll notice that active listening is a key part to the DEI in policies, implementations, in initiative programs, whatever you want to call it. It's active listening. Active listening to your society, active listening to your employee, active listening to your team members, active listening to your community members. Spawn the movement or spawn the action now, right? So now, my question, which I would direct this to you, back to you, Jaya. There's something you said. I love your journey. I love the way you moved from not just being impacted to impacting others. So I would say this question to you now is how do you ensure looking start from children now to corporate and now you your own, right? How do you ensure that diverse voices are not only heard but truly valued in all the initiative you've implemented, you've suggested? How do you ensure the diverse voices are not only heard but valued?
I absolutely love this question because and Jerad can probably co-sign this with me too, because he knows that this is a big part of, I think, my values as a practitioner, that collectivism and that community work is the I believe of DEI practices, that nothing ever moves forward. Progress is very difficult to make. I think successful progress or significant progress is difficult to make as a solo individual or as a singular leader. And so for me, I found that it's incredibly important to hear these diverse voices because I really also believe in the principle of nothing for us without us. And so one of the key drivers of the work that I do, and when I go into whether it's any new organization or I'm working with a new community, one of the first things I always do is that I will always start with listening. And active listening is like one of the first things I'll do through they go by different names, but I call it a listening tour. So I will one of the first things I'll do is I'll go and I'll sit down with the different groups of people. And it can be people, for example, that are part of a DEI council. It can be people who are aspiring to start employee resource groups. It can be employees that are from groups that are less well represented in an organization. And I want to hear different experiences and perspectives and thoughts and ideas, but also because we know that true innovation and the best solutions come from a diversity of thoughts and a diversity of perspectives and lived experiences. And so it's really about bringing those together to really implement the best solutions or to create the most effective goals, but also making sure those people that are not well represented have a voice in the process and that they have a voice in decision making. And so to me, that's where you start. You always start with listening. And I think that unfortunately, sometimes many organizations tend to kind of skip that process. And I think that's a critical error that's made. And so for me, that's where you start. You always ground and you center yourself around the different voices. And then not only do you start there, you maintain it. And so having those voices persist throughout the process, and you make sure that they have a seat at the table, you make sure that they have the necessary tools that will enable their success for the long term, that is really important to me. It's vital to ensure that they continue to feel empowered in whatever initiative you might be trying to drive forward.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that response, Jaya. I have a second question, but I just want to say this to the audience. If you're joining us, thank you. You can always tell us where you're joining from. If you do have questions, yeah, we have a time for questions and we're going to take questions. So you can send your questions to the chat box. I will be taking note of them. I'm trying my best to track on both LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you have questions, please put them forth. You have questions. It could be anything about DI. It could be about today's conversation. It could be about previous conversations too. And we will definitely try our best to answer the question. Yeah. So now there is something that Jaya said, which I would in turn take this to. I think I'll go to Tafiq now. She talked about leadership. I know a lot of us would talk about executive sponsors when we begin to have conversation in ARGs, right? We talk about the importance of executive sponsorship. We talk about the importance of leadership having a stake in DEI policies and DEI initiative for it to actually be successful. And the truth is that in any change implementation, leadership has to be involved. If not, we are in HR. We know how tough our resistance it could be if leadership is not totally involved. So it has to come from the top down to the bottom and not from the bottom to the top. Okay, Dereck is calling me, but I'm busy. So now I will go to Tafiq because you talk about menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, oh my God, that affects, well, we'll say affect women, right? But men also go through.
Yeah. Yes, I was just about to say, one of the what you were just talking about, the voices, listening, actively listening. And unfortunately, when it comes to menopause in the workplace, women are afraid to talk about it because of the stigmas and taboos. So I'm actually coming in to try to be their voice to like the leadership and to let them know that this is a social and economic issue that actually $150 billion in global income is lost every year because of the side effects of menopause. $1.8 billion in lost working time is caused by menopause. Those are the things that leadership wants to hear, right? They don't want to hear about the women's issues and what they're going through because they don't think it affects them. But once they realize not only do women go through menopause, but 40% of men over 45 experience a form of menopause, we believe that number is higher because men actually don't go to the doctor out of fear of it being something worse. So a lot of men won't even get it checked out. And then there's men who just have that machismo. It's like, they don't want to talk about the fact that they're losing their testosterone. And we can't forget that trans and non-binary people will go through menopause and andropause as well. So that's when I say it's like intersectional diversity, because that hits all areas of gender equality right there, right? And then the inclusivity aspect. So what happens for me is that I have to go in, I not only have to let the company know, what menopause is doing, but I also have to get the women to actually buy into the fact that a man is talking about menopause, right? So there's a lot of different areas that I have to cover when navigating menopause in the workplace. But yeah, leadership, the problem again goes back with the leadership issue, is that they just don't understand how it impacts them. And then once they realize, look, everybody on this panel right now and everyone listening right now, if you are between the ages of 40 and 60, or someone between the ages of 40 and 60, especially if it's a woman, she will go through menopause. She's going to experience on some degree. It's just a natural process. Men's testosterone levels will drop. So the same time, 40 to 60, all those things begin. So it's important for people not only to know and recognize this, but we also have to think about the fact that menopause is more than just a woman's health issue. It's a woman's life issue. It impacts her mentally, physically, and emotionally. So it impacts her relationships with her colleagues and her spouse. It impacts her work output, her productivity, her confidence. All of those things are affected. And when you have policies and things in place, and leadership knows that they need to be a part of that, because everything starts at the top, when they show that they're actually invested, that they want to provide the support. And I always tell people, menopause awareness is really simple. It can be a 2-hour workshop, and your company is certified for a year to be able to help your company. It's not the big pull like a employee benefits program or a healthy aging thing that has to be every month. It's a very simple thing. It's just about awareness, people understanding how it affects women, how their fears and concerns. Because again, when you don't have people that are afraid to talk about it, you have to be the voice for them first. So for every one person that may come to you and say there's a menopause issue, there's probably 10 to 20 other people who are afraid to come forward and talk about it.
So now, to get a buy-in from leadership, you have to go through the women first.
Oh yes, absolutely. And that's where, and again, that's where the things get tricky for me, because and even in the DEI space, I have had people tell me, "Oh, we don't want a man, we want a woman to talk about this," right?
Absolutely. Next question. Yeah.
And I say, well, that's not very DEI of you doing the first hand. But then on the second hand, I always say, and I always joke about this, I say, if you want to be, you can't get more diverse than me. I'm a Black man with a Middle Eastern name who's a homosexual married to a white man, and I teach menopause. So that how much more diverse can you get than that?
Awesome. Okay, so I'm also going to direct the same question to Jared, although I have another question for you, which has to do with collaborations and engagement. But I also want you to take into the question the role of leadership. I know you just started your own company. I know. I've been following. I know what's going on. And you too, Jaya. I saw that. I saw that yesterday. Yeah, I saw it yesterday. The new stride. I think that's the right word. That you both have engaged now. And in your careers, both of you, but I'll start with Jared first. How how have you been able to get leadership buy-in? I know you are also with the state and getting leadership into certain policies. Like we can all see what is going on in so many states. In Florida, for instance, we can see what's going on in Oklahoma, for instance. There is a lot of changes. Or should we dive into the Harvard issue and Unipen? There's a lot of issues going on there. So how do you get the leadership buy-in now in terms of implementations of policies around DEI?
Yeah, this is always an interesting question, because I think in some ways too, the notion of buy-in gives too much leeway or too much option for leadership to the way that I try to do my work is that I try to shift power to those who are the experts of their own experience, are the experts or the people who have lived experience connected to the work that I'm doing. And for me, I think that part of leadership is how we reduce or minimize our ego in an effort to ensure that we're doing the best by the folks that we're looking to serve. And I think that the idea of buy-in puts too much power in the position of leaders when we should be ensuring that we're amplifying the power of the communities that we're serving.
Mm.
And I think that part of that is a value that we have to instill within leadership, to say we don't have all the answers, we don't know what's best.
Mm.
And so we need to consider that we might need to share or shift some of that power so that we can learn from the folks who are directly impacted by the decisions or the choices that we're making. Um, so that's a very like abstract answer. In terms of the things that I think about or do in context of, you know, getting leadership support related to DE&I, the first thing that I really try to do is to connect it to the North Star or the why. You know, why is this important not only to the organization, but why it could be important to them, why it's important to me. Sometimes this work, DEI work, can be too headspacey, and there's not enough heart in it. And I think that if we only focus on the theoretical, the numbers, um, you know, the kind of theoretical ideas around DEI, then we lose some of the human impact that comes with this work. And I think that it's important for practitioners to be able to balance both of those things so that we're not missing one or the other, because they're both extremely important. And then I really lean into alignment. So not only the why of why this is important, but how does this align to our organization's goals, our mission, strategic plan, things that we've set out and said that this is what's important to us. There has to be alignment to say, well, this is what's important to us. Let me show you how DE&I can help us get to the goals that we're looking to achieve or accomplish. And I also, in that, really try to hone in on the idea that like DEI for DEI's sake isn't always the most effective
Mm.
way to go about it. Like we can't just do a bunch of trainings and assume that we're going to create the sort of change or transformation that we're looking to. DEI has to be done effectively. And you know, one thing that I am is I'm an intercultural development inventory qualified administrator. And one of the things that IDI tells us is that teams that are
Oh,
even
sorry.
I'm sorry, what
That
was
was
that?
from my system. Please go on. Pardon me.
You sound good.
Yeah, there was another sound that came out from my system, so I
Okay.
was doing something. Yeah, please go on.
My bad. So one thing that they've researched is that even multicultural teams can underperform if they don't leverage differences well, and
Mm.
that those teams tend to be destroyers. They destroy creativity, they destroy innovation, and because of that, they're highly underperforming teams. When we are able to effectively navigate and leverage differences in a way that's meaningful and positive, then we have teams that are creators. They lean into innovation, and they can help improve performance. And so for me, the alignment, the need is aligned with, like, when we talk about DEI can help improve performance or help improve outcomes or
Mhm.
profits or whatever that might look like. That's that's what it takes. And if we don't do that effectively, then we could cause more harm than good.
Mm.
There also has to be clarity about like what it is that we're expecting, what is being done, what the goals for what to be done is. There has to be clarity about, like, when we say DEI, what does that mean and how do we move forward in this work? If people don't know what to expect, then it's difficult for them to get behind something. So being open, honest, transparent, and provide that clarity is extremely important. And then you have to let people know what is their role in that. You know, what is in it for me, or what's
Mhm.
claim do I have in this work? And if
Yeah.
I don't know my specific role, then I'm just gonna let it slide, because I could do all things or I could do nothing. I don't know what my
Okay.
particular role is, and so it's important for that role clarification. And then I think we can utilize data to help build the case as well, to help us create some level of saturation, to triangulate, to better understand what are the needs, the gaps, the challenges that we're looking to address. And data, qualitative and quantitative, can
Yeah.
help us get there, help us do that. And then I think we have to think about what sort of desired outcomes and impact are we trying to make with our
Mhm.
work? Because when we talk about how to measure progress, how to measure um, the goals that we've set, we have to understand where we want to be, where we currently are, where we want to be, and how we can assess or understand how we get there, and ask ourselves the question of what does success look like and who have we asked? Because sometimes our metrics are only internally defined, and the people who we work with may say, like
Yeah.
y'all missed the mark completely. Like this is not what we wanted at all. And if we
Exactly.
only go by our own internal metrics, we might miss a key indicator of success that is essential to our work. And then the last thing that I'll say about buy-in is conviction. It's
Mm.
tough, but we need convicted leaders. We need convicted practitioners who are going to do the hard things, say the hard things,
Yeah.
and um, lean into those uncomfortable spaces, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. We can't
Especially it's
have
difficult.
Yeah, we can't have folks who like go into a space, try to advocate for something, and then shy away because of some pushback or because of the response that we get. We have to be strategic and think, well, this may have not spoken to them in the way that I was hoping. What's
Yeah.
another way that I can say this or do this so that we can still get this work done because it's so important? So I think we need folks who are convicted and willing to push because we know that the work that we're doing is the right thing to do.
Thank you very much, Jerad, for that detailed answer. I was taking note, and some of the things that you said, which I think very important. Very important. The key word is alignment. Not just aligned to your organization goals, to your organization mission and vision, which is pretty good. I preach that too. But you also have to look into the community you're serving. Like I know the state government will say, for instance, we represent, like our diversity represent the people we serve. The same thing goes to most organizations. They say the same thing, but actually, you need to really ask the question, does it really speak to the people you serve? We have so much policies. You mentioned training. Oh my God. There is a lot of trainings on DEI. Like sometimes you get tired. Like, can we get over this training and start talking about actions? Yes, we have a lot of knowledge. A Google search, it's going to give us a billions results, right? On DEI, just a Google search, a billion results on DEI. So we have a lot of results. Then there's the last thing you said before the last one, which is on the convicted leaders. You talked about data. Oh, yes. Everyone talks about data right now because leadership is very much interested in the business case. They want to see what's the productivity. They want to see what are the numbers. They want to see how does it bring in the revenue? How does it increase? And yes, we have proven cases, right? We have proven cases. That is no doubt. But the data now, both qualitative and quantitative, tells the story. But the question is, does it really tell the story? Food for thought. Does it
I,
really tell the story? Yeah,
I
you
think,
want to say something?
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you just asked a really good question there because I think, past couple of years I've spent, part of my time sort of immersed in that part of the conversation around the data.
Mhm.
And, I think that it's really interesting to have these conversations around data because I actually am in favor of data because I think that data, when it's used appropriately, because I think that data, when you use it only when you focus on the quantitative data. So, for example, like key performance indicators like KPI, or you're focusing on like traditional business metrics, it can be very damaging, I think, to DEI initiatives and efforts, because I think that it's used often against DEI initiatives or efforts to sort of dismantle them.
Mhm.
But when you, as Jerad was saying, use both quantitative and qualitative data together, and then you have alignment with your leadership,
Mhm.
then you're able to, I think, make a more informed decision so around your DEI efforts, your DEI programmings, initiatives, strategy. I think what has been challenging, however, for many practitioners, especially within 2023, has been the amount of, I think, risk that has gone up around data within many organizations and the ability to share it. And I think just within the confines of what's happened within the Supreme Court in the United States, at least, and many of the cases that have come from affirmative action, what we're seeing with the Fearless Fund, and the appeals that are ongoing with that case. A lot of organizations, for lack of a better term, have become spooked. And so, in this sort of like knee-jerk reaction, whether they're pulling back on their DEI initiatives or they're kind of clamping down on things that they see as creating potentially high risk, it is making the work, I think, a little more challenging. And so I think the question really is for a lot of practitioners, where do we go from here? Yeah. And for me, this is my frame of mind, is that, I think that it's really important for us to go, as you said, beyond the training. I think a lot of people still equate DEI to getting some training on unconscious bias or dimensions of diversity. And I think when people are starting the journey, that makes sense, so you can start from an educated and informed place. But to go beyond that, we really need to evaluate our systems and approach from the lens of equity and inclusion. Because I see many people who are opposed to this work trying to almost make diversity like a dirty word. And so how do we approach all systems with a focus on equity and inclusion? And to the point of the panel earlier, I think making sure that we're not just over focusing on race and gender, but multiple dimensions of diversity. Because when you design for everybody, rising tides are going to lift all boats. And so everybody benefits when we design from the margins. So, I think that it's really helping leaders to understand that that's where you can help unlock innovation. And that does lead to more accessible products that serve a greater number of people. Yes, there is a profitability factor to it. But I also don't like shying away from the moral imperative either, that, you're a company that operates within this country that is part of society. And so I think that there is an element of that as well that we can't abstract out of the equation.
Thank you very much. So we have now got into the future now. Let's talk a little bit about the future. But before we go into the future, how exactly do we even want to talk about the future without talking about the present or looking at the past, right? We have all been talking about our journey in the DEI space. We've talked about how we started. We've talked about how we are progressing. We've talked about our passion. We've talked about our initiative, implementation policies, and stuff like that. But now let's look more into the future. What's the future? The future of DEI. Now, we have the federal policy from the Supreme Court that is beginning to say, remove all officers, right? No more DEI office. Remove all. I did to justify or to help justify the reason. Or no, I think that's not the right word. The right word is to help understand the reason. I did okay, let me read a little more, right, about what they're trying to pass. I went over the internet, trying my best to get on videos, trying my best to get on articles, and I was like, okay, why did it make it sound like it makes sense? But it doesn't make sense. Like, what is going on? So now, and we're supposed to look into how we can also keep encouraging others, not just people who look like us or people who don't look like us, do the job, but unity in diversity. Unity in diversity, unity in inclusion, unity in equity. That is what we are advocating for. So now we all have presented ourselves as an advocate. What can we say is the future of DEI as a career? Should I get bothered? Should I begin to revamp my resume? Like, am I still gonna get jobs? Like, layoff is crazy. Will I get laid off? So those are some of the things. When your office has been crashed, has been taken away, you put people in panic. You put people in panic. Or should we talk about the case about the Harvard um, president that is currently facing the backlash because of context? Trust me, that is not something I really want to have in this conversation. But people make mistakes, right? I'm not judging and I'm not standing with anyone at this point. But there've been so many posts on assumptions. If this was done by this set of people, if this was done by this set of people, would we have received the same conclusion? Would we have gotten to the same conclusion? If I'm not saying what she did is good or not, but let's just talk about it. What is the future of DEI? Not as a career. We've talked about it as programs, as learning the voices, as passion, but what is the future as a career? Because people want to know, people want to go into, people want to advocate. Oh, who goes first? I really don't know who's gonna talk next. Okay, let me go with Tafiq.
So for me, as someone who is more of like a consultant with DEI people, what I've noticed is that as I've reached out to people, there's a lot of people who are like either no longer doing the profession or were let go.
Mhm.
So in that aspect, I think back to something that I think it's Jerad said earlier about to
Gerard.
some. I'm sorry,
Gerard.
Gerard.
Jerad. Sorry. Um, uh, so, to the effect of almost like DEI kind of needing a facelift, like just being portrayed as a little bit differently, because I think, like you were saying, like with all the things that are coming out right now, like they're trying to, like you're saying, cutting the things in Congress and all these things. I think they're looking at DEI in one way rather
Mhm.
than the, like we were saying earlier, the intersectional diversity of it, because they don't really get it and understand it. So again, I think it's up to us to educate them so that they can understand that it's more than what they think it is, and it's, and at the same time less than what they think it is.
Yeah.
So it's really about again going back to the education piece, because that's what my thing is. Mine is all about educating on awareness about things. So I look at it from that approach. Like for me, I don't do the data stuff like that. I tell the companies what they should look for, but I don't do that part of it. So I can't 100% speak to that, but I do believe that it's more of like us looking at it from a different approach so that they can see DEI in a different light. Because I think right now they're looking at it through one spectrum and
Yeah.
through one lens per
You're
se.
looking at it like you're only favoring this particular set of people, which is not so. You're whole, like you said, she is just a diversity hire. Doesn't she qualify? Doesn't she meet the portfolio? Doesn't she meet the expertise? She does, or is just a diversity hire. So it's not just about being a diversity hire. There is more to wanting to have a group of people, a diverse group of people who feel included, who feel accommodated, not just because I need to feel accommodated, not just because I need my voice to be heard, not because I want to sit at the table, but because I should. I do have the expertise. So now we have a bonus question, and I know, but if you do have questions, lastly to the audience, this is the time we're going to take questions if we have some. If not, I'll just go to my bonus question, which is okay. Can interested participants still kick off as career in DEI? Like looking at it going on, can people still have a career? I think we should not look at it just as a career right now, but I'll let Jaya go for the question.
Sure. I absolutely believe that this is still very much a viable career path. I think that the way that this career path will look is going to continue to evolve, just like any other field. And I don't see it as different from other fields in that regard. I think that being skilled in, other areas is very beneficial. So, I think that having the ability to, whether it's to facilitate or the ability to have program management skills or strategic thinking and business planning. There are other business skills that I think are very beneficial to always have alongside your repertoire of DEI knowledge, passion, commitment, and understanding. And so I think that you should always hold both in your hands. But I absolutely think that this work is still very much needed. There's still so much to be done. And I like to kind of lean back on this reminder from, I spoke to someone once a few years ago when all of the backlash was really starting, that she reminded me that this is a marathon. So
That's
in a
right.
marathon where there's decades of work already behind us and we've made progress, we are bound to hit these speed bumps. And so, I think it's sometimes when we work so hard and we see so much work still left to be done, it's easy to feel like, okay, is this the end of the road? Like, do I need to go find another job? Do I need to go dust off my resume? And I think that there's still so much for us to do. And whenever there is progress, there's bound to be a setback. And I am still very much committed and all into this work. And I know that there are many other practitioners that are as well. So I hold hope.
Yeah. One thing that has helped me is not just to look at DI as a career right now. It's not something I just want to get a corporate job on. It's something that defines me. And what defines me, I'm not going to stop doing it. No.
Yeah,
You're not going to stop being me. Yeah, we all say bring your authentic self to yourself. I want to say thank you very much. We have just like 2 minutes to the end of our session. And just like I said, it's never enough, right? 1 hour is never enough to discuss topics on DEI or on workplace diversity or anything that has to do with DEI. So I want to say thank you very much to my guest. It's been insightful. I've learned a lot, and I know that the audience have also learned a lot from your experiences, from your initiative, you work around the initiative, and of course, implementation. At this point, I want to say do not forget to connect. Yeah, to connect with them. And I have been showing off the QR code just to make it easy, but their names, let me do that. They are not using the same names. I think that's the right word. So you have the same names, which make it easy. I'm just going to highlight that so they can see. So please do try your best to connect with Jerad. It's Jerad Green on LinkedIn. Of course, also with Tafiq Akhir. Yeah, see if I'm right.
Yes, that was right.
Him on LinkedIn, and the same thing also with Jaya Mallik. It's Jaya Mallik on LinkedIn. Also, do not forget to connect with me. It's Florence Olusha. So, yes, I have my media name in brackets. So it's Florence Olusha. So please do not forget to connect with us on LinkedIn. Do not forget to connect with Brevard Consulting and Management on LinkedIn. If you have questions after this time, for those who are going to listen to the playback, please, you can always send me a DM and send the guest speakers also DMs. I'm very sure they are happy to answer. If you have questions about menopause or if you have questions about how to go around DEI or start, you can always connect with me, connect with every one of us, because we're ready to do the work, ready to put in the effort, and that's why we are here in this space. I want to say thank you very much for joining me. It is a pleasure to have you all.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that comes to the end of DEI small talks today. I want to say thank you very much to everyone once again. If you have questions, like I said earlier, we would definitely answer them afterwards. But thank you for staying with us. And please do not forget to like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share on LinkedIn and in every of your social media to let others know that we have conversations around DEI. Yes, it's small talk, but we have conversations around it because we are passionate about what we do. And on this note, I say enjoy the rest of your day and Merry Christmas.